Oh, I was there. Hated the day. The day was a miserable day. I mean, it was a
Really? I thought.
well, was it? Well, I can tell you now. It was the worst royal engagement I ever did. A royal wedding I ever did. You know, I thought to myself, you know, this is all showbiz rubbish.
You're absolutely right. I mean, what I discovered was, of course, that she was hunting for a man, and there's no doubt she targeted Harry.
The whole thing was just stage managed to suit them.
This is not the Harry he was a few years ago. And the only reason he's not like that is he's following the requests of Meghan. He said himself, what Meghan wants, Meghan gets.
And so he was angry, and I felt, you know.
For years, Harry and Meghan presented their financial independence as the foundation of their new life. But behind the polished announcements, luxury contracts, and public confidence, one unexplained figure kept returning in private conversations. 18.3 million, and the truth behind it threatened everything they had escaped to protect. The number appeared without warning inside a confidential review of Harry's finances after his departure from royal duty. It was not marked as a single inheritance. It was not described as income from a media contract, a property sale, or a private payment. Instead, 18.3 million sat across several guarded entries surrounded by vague descriptions and incomplete explanations. The more advisors tried to understand it, the less straightforward it became. Harry had spent years defending the decision to leave. He had spoken of independence as both freedom and responsibility. Walking away meant paying for security, supporting his family, and building a future without depending on the monarchy. Yet distance had not erased the obligations created by his former life. They had followed him across the Atlantic through lawyers, trustees, advisors, contracts, and promises that could not simply be abandoned. From the outside, California appeared to represent complete escape. There was a grand home, major commercial announcements, carefully planned projects, and the promise of a new empire built on their own terms. Behind that confidence, however, stood a financial structure far more fragile and complicated than the public could see. Money moved through companies, private arrangements, legal reserves, and security plans, each carrying conditions that were rarely discussed openly. What made the discovery more unsettling was that palace advisors had allegedly questioned the 18.3 million long before the figure reached Harry and Meghan's closest circle. They knew it did not belong to one account. Parts of it appeared connected to protected trusts. Other portions may have been reserved for security, legal exposure, future family responsibilities, and private agreements written in careful language. Meghan had once believed none of this would matter. Their commercial success was supposed to make royal wealth irrelevant. Whatever Harry had inherited or been promised would remain a distant safeguard, not the foundation of their new identity. But that confidence depended on one critical assumption, that the money was truly available if they ever needed it. Then came the warning. The danger was not only where the 18.3 million had come from. The real threat was what may already have been pledged against it, restricted within it, or promised before Meghan had ever entered Harry's life. In one private conversation, Harry was allegedly told that the financial safety net beneath their home, their plans, and their future might never have been legally secure. And as Harry began asking who truly controlled the 18.3 million, the question moved beyond money because the first name attached to the arrangement led directly back to the institution he believed he had left behind. Harry believed he had walked away from palace control, but freedom had come wrapped in documents, conditions, and silent expectations. Buried beneath the language of independence was an alleged agreement so carefully constructed that even Meghan may not have understood how much of their future remained tied to royal approval. The negotiations surrounding their departure had never been limited to one dramatic decision. Behind closed doors, every part of their new life had to be separated from the institution they were leaving. Money, security, titles, patronages, public duties, and future responsibilities were all placed under intense discussion. Nothing could be removed cleanly, because Harry was not simply leaving a job. He was attempting to untangle himself from a system that had shaped his finances, identity, and protection since birth. During those tense conversations, the palace allegedly agreed to provide temporary assistance while Harry reorganized his inherited assets and prepared to support his family independently. It sounded like a bridge toward freedom. But bridges have two ends, and one of them remained firmly attached to the monarchy. At the center of the arrangement was a crucial separation. Some money belonged directly to Harry. Other funds were protected by trustees, financial advisors, or legal structures created long before his marriage. On paper, those assets contributed to his wealth. In practice, he may not have been able to transfer them, borrow against them, or spend them without approval. Meghan believed marriage meant they were building one shared future. Their home, risks, ambitions, and financial decisions belonged to both of them. Yet inherited wealth could exist outside that shared structure, protected from joint ownership even while silently supporting the image of their stability. That distinction was not merely legal. It carried the power to divide what they believed they had built together. Harry was trapped inside the contradiction. He wanted to protect Meghan from palace interference, but part of their security still depended on financial mechanisms created by that same palace world. The more he tried to prove they were independent, the more carefully he had to conceal how much of their safety remained connected to his royal past. Commercial partners may also have viewed the couple differently because of that hidden foundation. The $18.3 million suggested strength, even if much of it was restricted. It made ambitious projects appear safer and their future more secure than it truly was. Meanwhile, the costs kept rising. Security, lawyers, staff, property expenses, and the pressure of building a global brand transformed freedom into a relentless financial burden. And buried inside the agreement was the possibility of an even darker condition, one tied to reputation, residency, marriage, or the commercial use of royal status. But the deeper the advisors examined the agreement, the more disturbing the structure became, because the money supporting Harry's independence appeared to carry conditions capable of turning that independence into a trap. The mansion, the security teams, the media ventures, and the carefully constructed global brand all projected permanence. Yet behind that image was one crucial assumption, that Harry's financial foundation could never disappear. When that assumption was challenged, every contract, promise, and private calculation suddenly began to look dangerously fragile. Their California life demanded far more than the purchase of an expensive home. The property itself brought taxes, maintenance, staffing, insurance, and constant security concerns. Then came the lawyers, public relations teams, producers, advisors, travel arrangements, and the growing cost of turning two famous names into a lasting global business. Freedom had not made their lives simpler. It had made every decision more expensive. The media deals sounded enormous when announced. Headlines spoke of vast contracts and powerful partnerships, creating the impression that Harry and Meghan had entered an almost untouchable financial world. But the reported value of a deal was not the same as cash sitting safely in an account. Production budgets had to be paid. Agents and managers took their share. Taxes, commissions, staff salaries, and performance conditions reduced what remained. Some payments depended on projects being completed, approved, or renewed. That difference mattered, because parts of their future may already have been built around projected wealth rather than guaranteed income. Property commitments, business plans, and private agreements could have been shaped by the belief that Harry's long-term fortune would always provide a stable foundation beneath them. Meghan did not see the spending as carelessness. She saw it as investment. Every project, new partnership, and public move was meant to build influence strong enough to survive without royal permission. In her mind, Retreating would only prove the palace had been right to doubt them. Harry was becoming less certain. He understood the need for growth, but he also felt the pressure of protecting his family without allowing their private life to become the price of commercial success. While some advisors pushed for faster expansion, others warned that the financial cushion beneath the Sussex brand was far thinner than anyone wanted to admit. Then, the most alarming detail emerged. The 18.3 million appeared to have been counted twice, first as Harry's personal financial security, and again as money already reserved for obligations he could not ignore. The same fortune that made their future look stable may already have been supporting trusts, legal protections, family responsibilities, and long-term commitments. During one private financial meeting, Harry was allegedly told that losing access to those disputed funds could affect far more than one account. Their property, companies, commercial agreements, and personal arrangements could all feel the impact. That meeting changed the question completely. The mystery was no longer whether 3 million existed, but whether Harry had ever possessed the power to protect it, and the answer was waiting inside a sealed royal structure. The truth was more complicated than a missing inheritance or a secret payment. The 18.3 million existed, but not in the form Harry and Meghan's advisors had allegedly assumed. It was divided, restricted, and surrounded by conditions, leaving Harry wealthy on paper while dangerously limited in reality. The figure was not the balance of one hidden account waiting to be unlocked. It was an estimated total assembled from different financial sources, inherited wealth, protected trust assets, years of investment growth, and provisions reserved for responsibilities that extended far beyond Harry's immediate needs. Together, they created the appearance of enormous personal security. Separately, they told a far more troubling story. A significant portion was allegedly held through arrangements established before Harry married Meghan. Those assets may have benefited him, but benefit was not the same as control. Trustees could determine when money was released, why it was used, and whether a request met the original purpose of the arrangement. Some funds may have been restricted until a certain age. Others could require approval for education, property, protection, or family support. Another part of the 18.3 million may already have been treated as security for future obligations. The children's protection, long-term legal exposure, emergency provisions, family contingencies Harry could not simply ignore. The money existed, but pieces of it may already have had destinations before he ever considered using them. That was where the misunderstanding became dangerous. Harry may have spoken of the entire valuation as his financial foundation, without explaining, or fully understanding, how little of it could be moved freely. Meghan and their commercial advisors could therefore have viewed the number as a private emergency reserve, something strong enough to support bold investments if contracts slowed or projects failed. Public discussion had only deepened the confusion. People spoke broadly about Harry's inheritance as though receiving wealth meant possessing unrestricted power over it. But ownership, access, benefit, and control were not interchangeable. That distinction had remained hidden beneath simple headlines until the Sussexes' financial pressure forced someone to examine the structure closely. Then came the revelation that changed everything. The protected wealth could not automatically be transferred into joint companies. It could not simply be placed under Meghan's authority. And it could not be used without limits to rescue a struggling venture or secure another ambitious expansion. Any attempt to restructure the assets might require formal approval from trustees. Worse, it could alert palace-linked advisors who still understood the original arrangements and the rules surrounding them. For Harry, the discovery cut deeper than money. Wealth connected to his mother, his childhood, and his attempt to escape royal control still carried instructions written by others. For Meghan, the pain was different. The fortune had not disappeared, but the future they had built may have rested on Harry's incomplete understanding of what he truly controlled. The $18.3 million was real as a total valuation, but much of it was restricted, protected, or committed, making it unavailable as the emergency fortune Meghan believed stood behind them. Yet discovering the restrictions was only the first shock, because the next document revealed what could happen if Harry's marriage, residency, reputation, or financial commitments placed those protected assets at risk. Meghan had helped build the brand, faced the criticism, and carried the emotional burden of their royal departure. But one cold legal distinction threatened to erase that shared sacrifice. The most protected part of Harry's fortune may have remained his alone and beyond Meghan's reach, under almost every imaginable crisis. The problem was hidden inside the way inherited wealth had been protected. Assets placed into trusts before Harry's marriage may never have become ordinary marital property. Meghan could benefit from the lifestyle those funds helped support, yet benefiting from wealth was not the same as legally owning it. If control remained with Harry or independent trustees, her direct claim to the $18.3 million could be severely limited. Then, advisors uncovered an alleged restriction with even darker consequences. Trust money could not simply be used to cover commercial debts, personal guarantees, or losses connected to Meghan's independent ventures. The clause was designed to protect Harry's inheritance from outside claims. But in protecting the fortune, it could leave Meghan exposed. That danger reached far beyond one bank account. Their home, companies, contracts, and intellectual property may have been held through different ownership structures. Some belonged jointly. Others may have been connected to separate businesses or private agreements. As long as income remained strong, those differences could be ignored. Under pressure, every boundary suddenly mattered. For Meghan, the discovery felt brutally personal. She had defended Harry through public attacks, confronted the monarchy, and helped build a new life when returning seemed impossible. Yet none of those sacrifices guaranteed her equal protection within the wealth beneath that life. She could share the criticism, the risk, and the responsibility while remaining legally separated from the strongest part of Harry's financial security. To her, the arrangement looked like another royal barrier, an old system designed to protect bloodlines, fortunes, and inherited power from those who married into them. It did not need to mention Meghan by name. Its effect was powerful enough without doing so. Harry resisted that interpretation. The restrictions had reportedly existed long before he met her. They may have been created to protect him from divorce, lawsuits, failed investments, or any future crisis. What Meghan viewed as palace control, Harry could defend as a shield built around his mother's legacy. But accessing more money might require him to consult trustees and advisors Meghan deeply distrusted. That transformed a financial problem into a question of loyalty. Meghan could lose everything did not mean immediate poverty. It meant losing the lifestyle they had created, leverage in their businesses, control over their home, public influence, and the belief that Harry's fortune would always rescue them. Then Meghan asked the question Harry feared most. Had the palace always known their independence could collapse the moment commercial income stopped paying for the life they had built? And once that question entered their home, the financial mystery became a marital crisis, forcing Harry to choose between the protections of his past and the woman who had asked him to build an entirely different future. Harry had once chosen Meghan over royal duty, public approval, and palace tradition. Now he faced a quieter but equally brutal choice: protect an inheritance tied to his past, or risk it to preserve the future he had promised her. Either decision carried the possibility of irreversible betrayal. For Harry, the pressure was no longer only financial. It had become deeply personal. He felt guilty that he had never fully understood the restrictions surrounding the $18.3 million, and even more guilty that Meghan may have built her confidence around a safety net he could not freely use. What he had described as security now looked more like a locked inheritance guarded by rules he had never questioned. The money carried memories that could not be separated from its value. It was tied to family history, loss, duty, and the lingering presence of his mother's legacy. To Harry, preserving it meant protecting something that had survived every fracture in his life. To Meghan, that meaning offered little comfort. Protected wealth was useless, she believed, if it could not defend the home, businesses, and independence they had created together. Harry looked toward the future of their children. Meghan looked at the crisis unfolding in the present. He wanted the inheritance preserved for the next generation. She wanted stability now, before financial pressure weakened their companies and reduced their control. Their disagreements intensified. Should they cut staff, reduce security costs, sell assets, restructure their businesses, or chase another major media agreement? Every option demanded sacrifice. Every delay increased the danger. Harry also began questioning the advisors urging Meghan to expand. They spoke boldly about new ventures, partnerships, and long-term growth, yet some appeared to assume his protected fortune would absorb the consequences if those plans failed. Meghan viewed his suspicion as fear. Harry saw it as survival. She felt increasingly isolated. She had surrendered royal security, endured public judgment, and followed Harry into an uncertain new life, only to discover that he still possessed a private financial shield she could neither control nor rely upon. Meanwhile, palace figures remained silent. They allegedly understood the growing pressure, but refused to step in unless Harry personally requested help. That possibility humiliated him. Returning to royal advisors would mean facing the institution he had publicly accused of controlling his life. Eventually, a private approach was made. Harry did not ask for money. He asked whether the restrictions could be changed. The answer was devastating. Altering the protections might be possible, but only through a full review of their finances, contracts, business obligations, and private exposure. The palace had not offered Harry a rescue. It had offered him a bargain, and accepting it would expose the private finances, contracts, and vulnerabilities Meghan had fought hardest to keep beyond royal reach. The monarchy did not need to threaten Harry or demand his return. It only needed to wait. The tighter the financial pressure became, the more powerful the palace's silence appeared, and the more Meghan feared that their struggle had been anticipated from the moment they walked away. Palace advisors refused to discuss the $18.3 million publicly. There were no explanations, denials, or reassuring statements. That silence created its own pressure. Every unanswered question made Harry and Meghan appear less certain of the fortune beneath their independence, while the institution remained protected behind legal restraint. Inside royal circles, the structure was allegedly far less mysterious. Palace legal teams understood how the trusts had been created, which conditions controlled them, and how much authority Harry actually possessed. The Sussex's newer commercial advisors understood brands, contracts, and expansion. They may not have understood a financial system built around inheritance, royal duty, and protection across generations. Any assistance would come at a price. Before approving changes or releasing additional support, palace-linked advisors could demand a complete review of the couple's contracts, debts, companies, property commitments, and future obligations. Such scrutiny would reveal whether their independent empire was genuinely strong or surviving on projected income and Harry's protected wealth. That possibility alarmed Meghan. A review could give the monarchy influence without placing a single royal figure inside their home. Advisors might question projects, challenge spending, or restrict how royal titles were used commercially. Accepting help could mean surrendering control over the public identity she had fought to build. Harry feared the opposite. Rejecting the offer might protect their privacy, but it could place their home, security, and stability at greater risk. He had promised Meghan that leaving would create safety. Now, refusing palace involvement could endanger the very future that promise was meant to secure. Hidden rivalries sharpened around them. Some insiders allegedly argued that Harry must be protected because he remained the king's son. Others believed rescuing him would reward decisions that had damaged the monarchy. William's position was said to be more complicated. He had little desire to finance Harry's choices, yet the long-term welfare of the children could not be dismissed. A compromise began to surface. The protected funds could remain untouched for Harry's children, ensuring their future while offering Harry and Meghan no unrestricted rescue in the present. For Meghan, that possibility was terrifying. It protected the royal bloodline while leaving her lifestyle, businesses, home, and personal standing exposed. The family's future could be secured while her own position became dangerously uncertain. Soon, the choice would reach beyond private accounts. The mansion, their companies, and Meghan's carefully built public identity were all approaching the same point of decision. With the palace refusing to release unrestricted money and their commercial future under scrutiny, Harry and Meghan reached the moment every carefully managed public image fears the moment when survival demanded a visible sacrifice. The $18.3 million had not disappeared, yet it could not save them in the way Meghan expected. As private options narrowed, the couple faced a final reckoning: shrink their empire, surrender control, or gamble everything on one last reinvention before the financial pressure became impossible to hide. The central truth could no longer be softened. Harry possessed substantial wealth, but much of it remained protected by conditions that placed it beyond ordinary use. It could preserve his future, support his children, and survive a crisis. Yet it could not freely fund Meghan's businesses, rescue every struggling project, or guarantee the lifestyle their independence had come to represent. That forced the couple toward decisions they had once believed success would make unnecessary. Staff could be reduced. Security arrangements could be scaled back. Productions might be delayed or cancelled. Even their home, the most powerful symbol of their escape, could be restructured, refinanced, or placed under painful review. Selling property or abandoning major projects would not look like an ordinary business correction. It would be interpreted as retreat. Every sacrifice could become evidence for critics who had waited years to claim that their post-royal life was collapsing. Meghan refused to accept that ending. She began looking toward another commercial chapter built around her own identity, one that would not depend on Harry's inheritance or palace-controlled structures. To her, reinvention was not desperation. It was the only way to reclaim control. Harry saw a different danger. Another expansion would require money, confidence, and time. If it failed, the pressure would deepen. He began questioning whether they were rebuilding or simply placing a new promise on top of an already fragile foundation. The mystery had also damaged something no financial advisor could repair. Meghan had assumed Harry's wealth would protect their shared future. Harry had assumed the restrictions would never become relevant. Neither had challenged those beliefs until the consequences reached their home. The monarchy, meanwhile, did almost nothing publicly. It did not need to. The trusts continued functioning exactly as designed, protecting Harry's inheritance, limiting risk, and preserving the family's long-term interests. Meghan would not lose every possession overnight, but she could lose certainty, influence, business power, security, and the independence upon which her new identity had been built. Harry now faced the final choice. He could attempt to break the structure and risk exposing everything, or preserve the fortune for his children while forcing Meghan's expansion plans to shrink. Whether she accepts a smaller future or risks building a new empire alone remains uncertain. Because the true power of the $18.3 million was never its size. It was the invisible boundary it created between Harry's royal past and Meghan's uncertain future. And while the world continues watching the headlines, the real battle remains hidden behind closed doors, where Harry's protected inheritance, Meghan's threatened empire, and the monarchy's oldest rules are still quietly deciding who will lose the most.